Have you ever had the unsettling feeling that you've lived this exact moment before, down to the smallest detail? Or perhaps that inner voice was screaming at you not to take that specific bus, only for you to later find out it broke down. This isn't magic, and it certainly isn't a glitch in the matrix. It's the incredible, complex machinery of your brain at work. Today, we are diving deep into the mysteries of consciousness. We're going to explore 20 scientific explanations for phenomena like déjà vu, intuition, and that elusive sixth sense. By the end of this video, you'll understand that your brain is the most powerful supercomputer on the planet, and you might just learn how to better interpret its signals. Do you believe in a true sixth sense, or do you think it's all just coincidence? Let us know in the comments before we get started. For centuries, people have attributed inexplicable premonitions and strange coincidences to divine intervention, mystic forces, or even memories from past lives. Intuition was often hailed as a gift from above, and déjà vu, a glimpse across time. These phenomena were truly shrouded in an aura of mystery. However, with the rise of modern psychology and neuroscience, researchers started looking under the hood of our consciousness. They began to realize that our most baffling experiences might have an entirely grounded, biological explanation. Today, we are not focusing on the supernatural. Instead, we are arming ourselves with scientific facts to see how our very own brain creates these astonishing effects, often making us believe in the miraculous. Let's uncover the science hiding behind these mysterious terms. Let's start with the most recognized phenomenon itself. The leading scientific explanation for déjà vu is called the dual processing theory. Picture this. The input from your eyes and ears acts like two separate streams of information, or two couriers, heading into your brain on parallel tracks. Normally, they arrive at their destinations simultaneously. You see a coffee cup and instantly realize that is a cup. But occasionally, one of those streams gets delayed. It trips up for just a fraction of a second. The first delivery carries the raw sensory image, while the second, delayed microscopically, carries the conscious realization of that image. At that exact moment, the brain processes the second arrival, interprets the time gap and thinks, "Wait a minute, I've seen this before," even though, in reality, it only registered the raw data mere milliseconds earlier. Visually, you can imagine this as two light impulses racing toward the brain's center, where one momentarily lags behind the other. This tiny synchronization error creates that powerful, yet entirely false sense of repetition. It's not mystical. It is simply a momentary logistical delay in the complex machinery of our consciousness. A second common explanation for déjà vu is known as the hologram theory. Consider how a hologram works. Even a tiny fragment holds information about the entire image. Our brains function in a similar fashion. Sometimes just a single familiar element in a completely new setting is enough for the brain to reconstruct the entire scene and register it as familiar. For example, imagine walking into a cafe for the very first time. The smell of coffee, the wallpaper pattern, or a specific song playing might subconsciously remind you of a place you visited in your childhood. You don't consciously recall that location, but your brain picks up this hologram fragment and incorrectly labels the entire new situation as previously experienced. Think of it like a jigsaw puzzle where one piece suddenly illuminates, making the rest of the unassembled image feel instantly recognizable. It is a powerful illusion created by the associative nature of human memory. The third common explanation for déjà vu involves divided attention. This happens when you perceive your surroundings, but you're not fully focused on them. Your brain registers everything subconsciously while you might be looking at your phone, for example, or simply lost in thought. Then you pull yourself out of that mental fog, look up, and consciously take in your surroundings. That's when the information enters the brain for the second time, but now in high focus. This creates a conflict. The brain immediately registers, "I've seen this," because technically it has, just a moment ago, peripherally. But your conscious awareness never logged the input. Imagine a camera that records an image that's initially out of focus and then suddenly snaps into a sharp view. For the operator, it's the same continuous moment, but for the viewer, it feels like two distinct frames. That's how our brain sometimes tricks itself, manufacturing that sense of repetition just from a simple shift in attentional focus. Let's move on to intuition. The fourth explanation is based on what we call hidden pattern recognition. Our brain is an incredibly powerful pattern-finding machine. Throughout your life, it accumulates a gigantic database of experiences, social interactions, successes, and failures. When you meet a new person or enter a new situation, your subconscious instantly scans this database, looking for matches. You might feel that a person is simply unpleasant without any clear reason. But in reality, their facial expressions, tone of voice, or mannerisms have subconsciously reminded your brain of someone who deceived you in the past. Consciously, you don't see the connection, but your subconscious mind has already issued an alarm signal. This is intuition. It's not magic, but rather the result of lightning-fast processing of massive amounts of data drawn from your past experience. Imagine a detective who sees hundreds of clues but points to one and says, "That's it!" That is how your brain locates the critical pattern. The fifth, and arguably the most surprising explanation, involves our own body. This phenomenon is known as the gut-brain axis. The expression, "I have a gut feeling," actually has a firm scientific basis. Deep within our digestive system lies a complex neural network that researchers often refer to as the second brain. This second brain is constantly communicating with the main brain, sending signals back and forth via the massive vagus nerve. In fact, many of our emotional and intuitive reactions often originate right here. For instance, intense anxiety can trigger very real physical sensations in your abdomen. This is where we get the common sensation of butterflies in the stomach, or that nervous, sinking feeling. When you make a decision based on a strong inner hunch, you're literally listening to signals your gut sends to your head. These messages are built upon biochemical reactions and stored past experiences. Visually, you can imagine this connection as a brightly lit superhighway connecting the main brain and the digestive system, along which critical information is constantly racing. The sixth explanation for intuition centers on heuristics, or mental shortcuts. Our brain is incredibly lazy. To avoid wasting energy on a deep analysis of every situation, it relies on ready-made patterns and rules built from past experience. These are heuristics. For instance, if you see an expensive product, you automatically assume it must be high quality. This is the price equals quality heuristic. An intuitive decision is essentially just a very rapid heuristic. The brain doesn't conduct a full analysis. It simply applies the most suitable template from its existing arsenal. Sometimes this leads to flashes of genius, and sometimes it results in errors and biases. When your intuition doesn't fail you, it means your brain selected the correct pattern for the current situation. This is similar to how an experienced chess player makes a move, not by calculating every possible outcome, but by instantly recognizing a familiar position on the board and applying a well-practiced solution. Our seventh explanation for what brings us closer to the idea of a sixth sense is the concept of mirror neurons. These remarkable cells in our brain fire up not just when we perform an action ourselves, but also when we simply observe someone else doing it. If you see someone smile, the mirror neurons responsible for that action activate in you too. You are literally mirroring their emotion internally. This is the very foundation of empathy, the ability to feel what others are feeling. When you say you can feel the atmosphere in a room, or when you pick up on bad vibes from a person, that is your mirror neurons at work. They quickly read nonverbal cues, facial expressions, posture and gestures, and simulate the corresponding emotion right there in your own brain. You aren't reading minds, you are literally trying on someone else's state, and that modelling is what we perceive as a sixth sense. The eighth point is subliminal perception, or subconscious cues. Our senses register a colossal amount of information every second, but only a tiny fraction of it ever reaches our conscious awareness. Everything else is processed in the background, deep within our subconscious mind. This includes sounds, smells, and micro-expressions on people's faces, things you consciously fail to notice. However, this information accumulates and subtly influences your emotions and decisions. Imagine you're talking to someone, and an inexplicable feeling of distrust or unease suddenly creeps up on you. It's possible your subconscious mind caught a microscopic flash of disdain on their face that lasted only a fraction of a second. Your conscious mind missed it, but your subconscious did not. It sent you an immediate alarm signal, which you registered as a gut feeling or an intuitive hunch. It works just like an iceberg. We only ever see the tip, while the massive structure that dictates its direction and movement is hidden beneath the water. Our ninth point deals with so-called prophetic dreams or premonitions. This phenomenon is often rooted in the mechanism of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's take an example. Suppose you dream you're going to bomb an important job interview. This dream naturally triggers anxiety. You arrive at the interview already nervous and self-conscious. You fumble your answers, and consequently, you do fail. You then think, my dream came true. In reality, the dream didn't predict the future. Your belief in that dream and the resulting anxiety is what actually shaped that outcome. Unconsciously, you acted in a way that ensured the prediction would come true. The exact same mechanism applies to positive premonitions. If you feel a day is going to be lucky, you behave more openly, confidently, and cordially, which naturally attracts positive outcomes. This is a powerful psychological mechanism that we frequently mistake for mystical foresight or genuine psychic ability. The 10th, and arguably most unexpected, explanation for déjà vu comes directly from the field of neurobiology. Some scientists connect this phenomenon to what are called microseizures, or tiny electrical events in the brain's temporal lobe. Now, while the word seizure sounds frightening, we are talking about completely harmless, minuscule electrical glitches that most people don't even register. The temporal lobe is responsible for crucial functions, including recognizing familiar objects and forming new memories. A short, anomalous spike of neural activity in this region can momentarily short-circuit the feeling of recognition. As a result, entirely new information is mistakenly tagged internally as familiar. Think of it this way. It's like a brand new file on your computer accidentally getting stamped with a label that says Archived, 1999. You look at it and wonder how you could possibly remember something so old. It's simply a system error, not a mysterious glimpse into the past. The 11th mechanism explaining intuition is called somatic markers. This theory was proposed by the renowned neuroscientist Antonio Damasio. The core idea is that when we experience an event, our brain links it not only to the facts, but also to the physical sensations we felt at that moment. For instance, a successful deal might be associated with a feeling of pleasant excitement, while a failure triggers a pang or a knot in the stomach. These physical sensations are what we call the somatic markers. In the future, when you encounter a similar choice or situation, the brain instantly activates the corresponding marker. You haven't had time to analyze everything logically, but your body already reacts, either with a pleasant warmth or an uncomfortable chill. This is the intuitive cue, based on your body's stored emotional experience. It is literally wisdom, recorded not in your thoughts, but in your physical sensations. Our 12th explanation might sound like something straight out of the animal kingdom, but it definitely applies to humans too. This is the hidden detection of pheromones. Pheromones are chemical substances that living organisms release into the environment, affecting the behavior of other individuals. For a long time, it was widely believed that this system was largely undeveloped in humans. However, contemporary research suggests that we are, in fact, capable of unconsciously picking up each other's chemical signals. These signals can influence our mood, stress levels, and our immediate feelings of attraction or repulsion. When you meet someone and feel instant kinship or, conversely, an immediate aversion, you might be reacting not just to their appearance or their words, but also to their unique chemical cocktail. This is an invisible level of communication that our conscious mind doesn't register. yet it may be the foundation for many of those intuitive, gut feelings we have about other people. The 13th point debunks the myth of so-called prophetic dreams. This phenomenon is known as cryptomnesia, or hidden memory. Essentially, our brain records a massive amount of information, but completely forgets its source. You might have quickly skimmed a headline, overheard a snippet of conversation, or seen a scene in a movie, and then totally forgotten the encounter. Sometime later, this information surfaces in your dream. Then, when a similar event occurs in reality, you feel certain you predicted it while you were sleeping. In truth, you weren't predicting the future at all. You were merely recalling previously acquired but forgotten information. For instance, you might hear a weather report about an impending storm on the radio, forget it immediately, and then dream of a terrible storm that night. When the hurricane hits the next day, you're amazed by your gift of foresight, when in reality, it was simply your memory doing its job. To visualize this, imagine words flying out of a book, settling unnoticed into your memory, only to reappear later inside the bubble of your dream. The 14th point is particularly relevant for true professionals. Expert intuition is actually the result of what cognitive scientists call chunking, the grouping of information into coherent blocks. An expert's brain, whether they are a doctor, a firefighter, or an investor, doesn't process every single detail in isolation. Over years of practice, that brain has learned to combine vast amounts of data into meaningful units, or chunks. When an experienced physician examines a patient, they don't analyze each symptom separately. They instantly perceive the holistic picture, a familiar chunk associated with a specific diagnosis. This process happens so quickly that it feels like an intuitive flash of insight. A firefighter who feels that a roof is about to collapse is actually unconsciously reading dozens of signs. The color of the smoke, the sound of the crackling, the ambient temperature. Their brain instantly processes this chunk of danger and delivers the command, "Run!" This isn't magic, it is the highest form of mastery. The 15th explanation brings us back to déjà vu, offering another perspective on memory glitches. This theory focuses on a disruption in memory encoding, known as an encoding failure. Normally, when we perceive something, the information first enters short-term memory before being transferred to long-term memory, but only if the brain deems the data important. The encoding failure theory suggests that sometimes this system malfunctions. New information, which should be treated as current, is mistakenly routed straight into the archive of long-term memory. As a result, the current moment, which should feel immediate and present, is perceived by the brain as a deep memory from the distant past. Think of it like writing a letter. Instead of placing it on your desk to be sent, you accidentally slip it into a drawer filled with old correspondence. When you stumble across that letter a second later, you are surprised, wondering where it came from and why it feels like something you read ages ago. It's nothing more than a momentary administrative error in the filing department of your brain. The 16th phenomenon is that eerie feeling of being watched. This is handled by a specialized neural network in our brain called the gaze detection system. Evolutionarily, this system was vital for survival. It helped us spot a predator or an enemy before it was too late. This system is incredibly sensitive. It can determine the direction of another person's gaze using minimal data, even from a long distance and with peripheral vision. But, like any hypersensitive system, it sometimes produces false alarms. It is so finely tuned to detecting glances that it can activate even when no one is actually looking. You might be walking down an empty street, and suddenly you feel like someone is staring at you from a dark window. That's just the hyperactivity of your ancient security system kicking in. Your brain prefers to raise 10 false alarms than miss one real threat. Its motto is simply, better safe than sorry. The 17th explanation deals with those uncanny coincidences, or as the psychologist Carl Jung called them, synchronicity. Why does it sometimes feel like the universe is sending us signs? The answer is simple: confirmation bias. Our brains absolutely love finding patterns, even when there aren't any. We tend to notice and assign huge importance to coincidences that validate our existing thoughts or feelings, while completely ignoring the thousands of moments when nothing aligns at all. You think of an old friend, and moments later, they call you. You instantly see that as a sign, but you don't keep track of the hundreds of times you thought about them, and they didn't call. Imagine you shoot at a wall, and then you draw the target around the hole where the bullet landed. It looks like a perfect bullseye. That's exactly how our brain draws targets around random coincidences, creating the illusion of deep meaning and cosmic connection. Point 18 addresses esoteric concepts such as aura viewing. From a scientific standpoint, this phenomenon may be a manifestation of a rare neurological condition called synesthesia. Synesthetes experience a crossover or blending of the senses. For instance, they might see sounds as colours, taste words, or perceive letters and numbers inherently linked to certain hues. One specific form of synesthesia involves associating human personalities with distinct colours. When such an individual interacts with someone, they can literally perceive a coloured cloud or a halo surrounding them. For the synesthete, this is a genuine sensory experience. However, to an outside observer, this phenomenon is easily misinterpreted as the mystical ability to see an aura or an energy field. This is not a superpower, it is simply unusual or cross-wired brain circuitry that merges different channels of perception into one unique experience. The 19th scientific concept driving intuition is called interoception. Simply put, interoception is the ability to sense your body's internal state, things like your heartbeat, breathing, muscle tension, or hunger. Individuals with highly developed interoception have a deeper grasp of their emotions because they are literally feeling the physical manifestations of those emotions. Research suggests that these individuals possess heightened intuition, particularly concerning financial and social decisions. When we hear the common advice to listen to your gut or trust your body, we are actually referring directly to interoception. By consciously improving your awareness of these internal bodily signals, you are, essentially, training your intuition. Think of it as learning to read your body's internal dashboard. The clearer you interpret these signals, the more accurate your decisions and hunches will become. This is a skill that absolutely can and should be developed. And finally, the 20th explanation, once again tying back to déjà vu and dreams, source amnesia. This mechanism is similar to cryptomnesia, but with one crucial difference. You retain the memory itself, but completely lose the knowledge of where that memory originated. You might have seen a certain location in a movie, a video game, or perhaps a dream. The memory of that location stuck with you, but the surrounding context, the fact that it was just a film or a game, was wiped clean. Years later, you encounter a similar place in real life. It feels intensely, almost painfully familiar, yet you cannot figure out why. This triggers a powerful sense of déjà vu. You aren't recalling a past life. You simply cannot recall the source of your existing memory. Your brain flags it as familiar, but it fails to attach the critical label, such as, I saw this in a movie. So, this confusion is what generates that mystical feeling that you have definitely been here before. So, what's the takeaway here? Déjà vu, intuition, the so-called sixth sense. It turns out that these mysterious phenomena aren't messages from another dimension. Instead, they are the product of our brain's incredibly complex and sometimes bizarre internal workings. They range from tiny signal delays and powerful subconscious calculations to biochemical connections with our gut, and even funny little filing errors in our memory system. Our brain is constantly trying to make sense of the world, find patterns, and ultimately protect us, using every available trick in its arsenal. So the next time you experience déjà vu, or your intuition points you toward the right decision, remember this. It's not magic. It's your personal, incredibly complex supercomputer running billions of calculations every second to help you survive and thrive. Thank you for sticking with this video until the very end. If you learned something new about your brain today, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dive into science. Which of these 20 explanations did you find the most surprising? Or perhaps you have your own intuition story that you can now look at through a scientific lens. Let us know in the comments below. I'd be genuinely interested to read your thoughts.